I'm Cynthia Arel. I'm a Leeton-based artist, and when I heard about the Common Thread exhibition, I felt that was something I'd really like to be part of. I've always been attracted to handmade items, just knowing that they've been touched and worked on by somebody, often for many, many hours, and I always felt a connection to that. I started to crochet probably about 5 years ago. I learnt with another group of Leeton ladies, and I generally make blankets, hats, that kind of thing, mostly for family and friends. And so I made this piece especially for the exhibition. Some of the themes to do with common thread, in the technique that I used for joining the yarn. It's called a Russian join. So you're actually joining one piece of yarn to another, so you're making it a continuous thread. So the piece is made, it's done in the round, and you start with one thread and just keep adding. I also used leftover yarn from other projects I've worked on, whether it's something I've made for a friend or a family member. So while I was making it, I was thinking about those people, so there's that connection as well that has gone into it. I always say I put love into everything that I make, so there's the love of all the people that I've made things for previously with these different types of yarn. So there's acrylic, there's wool and cotton. So I basically just had a bundle of leftover different types of yarn, and I'd just pull one out when I needed it and add it on to the end of the previous one. With the stitches, I've used stitches that other members of my family use or used to use. So there's connection to my family there. So my grandmother, she would make baby blankets for each of the grandchildren until there were too many coming at once and she couldn't keep up. But she always liked to use this stitch, which is a single crochet chevron stitch, so kind of a zigzag. So I thought about her as I was working on that section. So then I've also included some fan type patterns, which is something that my mum liked to do in her crochet. So she'd make a lot of doilies and jug covers, that kind of thing, but she used a very fine cotton, so it was like a lacy stitch. Something that I don't usually do, but I wanted to make sure I included her. And the chair that I'm sitting in is actually the one that she would sit in to crochet or knit or whatever she was working on. So I feel there's a connection there as well. So this chair always makes me think of my mum. At the top here, this is actually where I started. And I started with a cluster stitch, which is something that my auntie does. So my grandmother, who made the baby blankets, now her daughter, who's my auntie, does that for a lot of her grandchildren. But she will do flowers that include this kind of cluster or popcorn stitch. And she does granny squares that then she joins together and makes into a blanket. So in that way, use of the stitches and patterns is really my connection to my family. And also the use of leftover yarn from various projects takes back to a very old tradition of the granny square, where women who would crochet blankets, they would use all the leftover bits to make the different squares and then join it all together, so nothing was wasted. So I also wanted to include that kind of tradition of using the leftovers from other projects to make something new and beautiful. So that's essentially my process and themes of the piece that I've made. I also have connections to other people, other artists in this exhibit. So Robin Hutchinson, who was my high school art teacher. And also we've worked together more recently, so after about 25 years of not even seeing each other, we've worked together several times recently. We both worked on the Henry V production that was done here in 2021. So she worked on costumes and I was working on set and props. And since then, we've also been working and are currently working on Griffith Regional Theatre's production of The Wedding Singer the musical. So together we're working on costumes for that. I also have a connection to Hannah Blackburn, whose work features in this exhibit. We actually learned to crochet together. We both took classes with Gloria Riches, who's a lady from Stanbridge who taught us both to crochet and quite a few other people. And I have a connection to Zoe Lucas as well. She worked on the Henry V production. And so there's a lot of different ties in this exhibit, so many threads that go throughout the exhibit in a lot of different ways.